Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. Canada's Auditor General released a report on Indian Act status applications on Tuesday morning. The report finds the existing government system cumbersome, slow, and inefficient. APTN's Fraser Needham has that story.
Registration under the Indian Act plays a central role in the recognition of First Nations people under Canadian law.
But Auditor General Karen Hogan says the federal government is not living up to its end of the bargain. A report released at a press conference in Ottawa on Tuesday finds 80% of status applications took Indigenous Services Canada more than the 6-month standard to process. There's a backlog of more than 12,000 applications. And for First Nations who assist in the processing of applications, the funding formula has not been updated in 3 decades. The report finds there was an increase in status applications of about 58,000 between 2019 and 2024 due to amendments to the Indian Act, but it finds funding to ISC to process these applications has also increased. Either way, Hogan says there is no excuse for such long delays and backlog in processing.
Taking 16 months to make a decision is a long time for someone to be waiting to find out if they can access benefits that they have the right to under Canadian law. And I think many would ask themselves, if the Canadian Public Service can process an important document like a passport in a timely way, why can't they make a decision under the Registration Act in a timelier way?
Equally alarming is the lack of government resources invested in First Nations that are assisting ISC in processing applications. Almost 30% of First Nations with a community-based registration administrator receive only the minimum of $5,000 per year.
But part of reconciliation is to transition all of that to the communities, and without proper funding and then the ability to be proper trained, First Nations communities aren't going to be well equipped to take this on. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there, not just about increasing the funding to these partners, but to also make sure that training and capacity is created before things are transitioned over.
In a press release, Indigenous Services Canada Minister Mandy Galmasti welcomes the report and says the department is making improvements such as moving to a digital application format and the introduction of legislation in the Senate to address remaining discriminations in the Indian Act. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Manitoba Kuwaitanawi Okimakanak has teamed up with the Southern Chiefs Organization to better serve the hundreds of First Nation wildfire evacuees displaced throughout Manitoba. At a Friday press conference, MKO Grand Chief Garrison Settee said the SCO will boost on-the-ground support at sites outside of Winnipeg. That includes congregate shelters and hotels in Brandon, Dauphin, Winkler, and Portage la Prairie. There are nearly 21,000 registered wildfire evacuees in Manitoba, but some, including those in Cranberry Portage and York Factory First Nation, will be allowed to head home this weekend. Settee said a task force with the province, Red Cross, and First Nations communities to coordinate a smooth return for all evacuees is in the works.
Task force that's being created right now to facilitate a process of repatriation, and the mode of transportation will probably be buses, and having a coordinated effort to bring everybody home through a system where buses are being used. One of the communities is isolated, so that'll be a different process, of course. So they're already starting to plan on how they're going to repatriate the members of our First Nation communities. So it's something that's happening already. They're starting to plan, and when that plan is available, they'll be able to execute it when the time comes for everybody to go home.
Meanwhile, some wildfire evacuees in Manitoba say they're receiving fraudulent text messages and calls from scammers pretending to provide disaster relief. The Canadian Red Cross wants everyone to be cautious of unsolicited requests for payment or personal information from fraudsters impersonating them. Sav Jonesa has more.
Even during a time of crisis, scam artists never take a break. Some wildfire evacuees in Manitoba are being targeted by fraudsters pretending to be the Canadian Red Cross.
We've received reports of that, and we're asking Manitobans to ensure that they're responding to official communications through the Red Cross. Don't provide your information to third parties or anything that's unvalidated. And a good way to verify that is Go to MB Ready or the Red Cross website directly.
Text messages, phone calls, and possibly even emails are going out to unsuspecting Manitobans displaced by wildfires. They promise financial aid to many who are desperately waiting for it. But the result may be costly as scammers demand banking information, social insurance numbers, and even an initial payment. The Canadian Red Cross says those requests are red flags. Individuals eligible for financial assistance will not need to provide their social insurance number, bank account information, or credit card number during their registration or to receive assistance. In addition, the Red Cross will not ask for any form of payment in order to receive assistance. More than 20,000 wildfire evacuees are registered with the Canadian Red Cross in Manitoba. It's in charge of dispensing daily stipends on behalf of the province so that people can continue to pay their bills and make ends meet during a time when many are out of work. Though Manitobans have taken to social media to show off the fraudulent messages, so far Manitoba RCMP have received no reports from people affected. They remind people that if you feel uncomfortable or suspicious, hang up, delete the email, or simply ignore the request. Don't feel pressured to make any decisions and never send money. It seems like Manitoba isn't the only province being impacted by scammers. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe had this to say.
Taking advantage of people in what is an extremely vulnerable situation where they and their family have been displaced from their home, often had to travel halfway across the province, hours and hours in the dead of night. For someone to take advantage of a family that is in that situation, hell hath no place hot enough for them.
The Canadian Red Cross says to contact local authorities if you suspect someone is trying to scam you. Sav Jones, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
A ceremonial space in the core of Winnipeg's inner city has been shut down for over half a year. Tired of not getting any answers as to why, some locals have begun occupying the building, hoping to force its board to open its doors. APTN's TR Wheatley has more.
Mikisu Miigwan speaks to her ancestors in song outside the Circle of Life Thunderbird House. She's a month into her ceremony, living inside, wanting to know why the building designed by Douglas Cardinal is dying.
We're sick and tired of this space not being used the way it's supposed to be, this space just being desecrated when this is supposed to be a beacon of hope and a beacon of light and healing for everyone.
Mikisu Miigwan is one of a half a dozen people occupying the building at any given time. They want the board of directors to hold annual meetings and explain what happens to the funding.
The board is just at a standstill. They are unwilling to work with us. They are unwilling to set a date and time. We've made consistent communication with them on record, like through email and text.
They also want an elders council and community input as to who sits on the board. They want regular staff working on programs again, drum sessions, a sweat lodge, groups like AA and anger management. Mikisu Miigwan says Thunderbird House could be the difference between life and death. She arrived in Winnipeg 15 years ago battling addictions.
When I moved to the city, this is the first place I came because it was the only place I knew of that I could try and get the healing and the support that I needed. And to have these doors closed to community when there's so much healing that's needed, it's just heartbreaking. The board just let us know that they spent a bunch of money on the windows and repairing the windows. So I guess this is the repair job.
She asks why no visible renovations have been done after Indigenous Services Canada sent money for restoration after the Thunderbird House was broken into and copper was stripped off its roof. It opened in 2000 as a safe space to learn culture and traditions and to heal. About all that's left is this beaver skinning class run by a different organization. The inside is closed to the public.
Until everything is fixed.
Colleen Rajat says the doors are closed until repairs can be done. She was a volunteer board member for about a year. She took over as chair of the board of directors a month ago, around the same time the occupation started.
So I had a meeting with Indigenous Services Canada, Tanya LaFontaine, and she just sent me the funding agreements that were put in place before my time, even before I joined the board. So I have to print them out and go over them and see exactly how much money is there and how it can be spent.
Rajat is a 60s scoop survivor. Like the occupiers inside, she used Thunderbird House to reconnect with her people.
I came here at the beginning of my journey to find my birth family, and I was able to get support. So that's why I have taken on this role of chair at Thunderbird House, because as we can see, it's in need of repair, and I really want to bring it back to what it used to be.
She says she worries for the safety of the occupiers. The roof leaks and could cave in. Rajat did phone police. They told her to get an injunction.
An injunction costs $50,000.
She also knows going the court route isn't helpful, as all parties want the same thing, the Thunderbird House up and running once again. Until then, she's asking for some patience as she works toward calling an AGM this summer and getting the repairs that are desperately needed for the building before the winter. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Some sacred stones have made their way home more than 100 years after they ended up in a museum. That story and more still to come. Welcome back. A new Indigenous-owned cafe called Greywolf is brewing up some strong coffee and strong community connections in a small town in Manitoba. As APTN Sierra Bettens tells us, the owner, Tanya Clark, made her dream a reality and explains the story behind the cafe's name.
When Tanya Clark remembers her late father, George Buddy Clark, he's sitting with his grandkids with a hot beverage in his hands.
He would always come and sit and have his tea, and I say tea because he would tell everyone that it was tea, but it was actually coffee with sugar.
A residential school survivor, George never had the opportunity to attend ceremony or receive his spirit name.
Our names are how we identify and how we transition into the spirit world. So once he did pass, we held a ceremony for him, and that's where we found out, his name is Greywolf Man.
Today, his daughter is honoring his legacy by launching the Greywolf Cafe in Dugald, Manitoba. Since its grand opening this weekend, the cafe has been the talk of the town, located just outside Winnipeg.
We had a line up throughout the door all day long until we locked the door at 4.
The menu offers locally roasted coffee, sweet treats baked by Clark's mother-in-law, and fresh Bannock breakfast sandwiches.
We had Dana Constant come in, who's a Red Seal chef from York Factory First Nation, and she put the entire kitchen together. She trained all the staff, and we perfected together a Bannock that would be soft enough for the breakfast sandwiches.
The cafe also features personal touches, like this set of chairs Clark inherited from her father.
When we decided just under a year ago that we were going to do this, we found Destiny Seymour's prints and recovered the chairs, and we always had the vision to have them in front of a nice, beautiful fireplace.
Eager to make full use of the space, Clark is already planning a calendar of events for the summer.
But we'll also have community events like seniors afternoons, paint nights. Jackie Travers has agreed to come in and host a paint night in August.
For her, the cafe is more than a morning stop for a caffeine fix. It's a place for community to gather, heal, and share stories, including the one behind Greywolf.
My grandmother went to residential school. My dad went to residential school. I didn't grow up in community, didn't speak the language. My kids don't speak the language, but my grandson was the first one to start dancing powwow and learning our language. So in my short lifespan, you see really wonderful things happening.
For hours of operation, visit greywolfcafe.com or check out the cafe's Facebook page. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
2 sacred ribstones, hundreds of years old, were recently returned to the Siksika Nation in Treaty 7. APTN's Chris Stewart was there and has more on the significance of the return of these sacred stones.
Here, thank you.
A full house was on hand at the Blackfoot Crossing Historical Park to witness the return of cherished rocks called ribstones to the Blackfoot Siksika Nation. These ribstones are hundreds, if not 1,000 years old. They were used for meditation and prayers. and to bring prosperity to the hunt. For over 100 years, these ribstones have been kept at the Canadian Museum of History in Quebec, and now they are officially home.
As we celebrate the return of these sacred stones, I'd like to take the opportunity to encourage Canadian and international institutions to please proactively work with Indigenous communities to restore their access to these very important pieces of their culture. Today,
A group of Blackfoot peoples traveled to Ottawa to determine what nation the stones came from.
It was identifying who the rocks belonged to. So the elders from Piikani, from Kainai, they were able to identify that the ribstones belonged to Siksika people. So once they identified that, we began the repatriation process.
And so having these rocks back home so we can tell our future generations of what they were used for and how they were helpful in us maintain our life and exist on the prairies by being able to hunt the buffalo and live off the buffalo and live off the land.
It's not the first artifact to be returned. A year ago, a sacred headdress was returned by a museum in England. And in 2022, a buckskin shirt, leggings, a bow and quiver belonging to Chief Crowfoot, who signed Treaty 7, were returned from another museum in England. And the Siksika people are not stopping there.
And we are looking at bringing more things home each year. We're looking at going to New Mexico, where there's a Mutuguk headdress down there. In Colorado, museum there. And of course, Washington, D.C., there's things there that belong to us. And we are looking at reaching out and gaining more, bringing more items home.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Blackfoot Crossing Historical Park, Alberta.
A new episode of APTN Investigates airs right after this newscast. We'll bring you a preview after the break. Welcome back. Deanna Garan never imagined she would one day go to university. But thanks to the University of Manitoba's Pathway to Indigenous Nursing Education program, the Red River Métis student recently graduated with her Bachelor of Nursing. She recently sat down with APTN Sierra Bettens to talk about how the program helped her grow in her studies and learn more about her culture.
In nursing school, Deanna Garan learned how to monitor vital signs and provide compassionate care. But she also learned how to sew a ribbon skirt and reconnect with her roots. After years of hard work, Garan received her Bachelor of Nursing diploma, wearing her skirt, sash, and Red River Métis pride. But going to university wasn't always the plan. For 15 years, Garan worked as a makeup artist and manager. Then, the pandemic happened.
I lost my job. I didn't think that it was going to be something I could do anymore, doing makeup and working where I was working. So I thought, well, if ever I was going to go to school, this would be the time.
Garan took a leap of faith and submitted her application on the registration deadline. She was then connected to the university's Makwa Omushki Kim Pathway to Indigenous Nursing Education, or PINE unit. Director Rhonda Campbell says PINE supports hundreds of Indigenous students on their journey from pre-nursing to graduation.
Smaller classroom sizes for some of the courses, and a lot of tutoring support as well is offered. PINE also helps with personal supports, connecting students to other resources at the university, and also cultural supports is a big area. We have our own knowledge keeper at the College of Nursing, and so students are able to access our knowledge keeper for connecting with ceremonies, if they want any teachings.
Garan credits PINE with helping her grow academically and culturally.
It was just great to have all-around support and have access to elders. They really helped me reconnect, because that was something that was important to me when I started my university journey, because I didn't really grow up with much culture. So it was really, really helpful and gave me a place to feel like I belonged here.
Through PINE, she met Olivia Molyneux, who is Anishinaabe from Henvey Inlet First Nation in Ontario. A mother of two, Molyneux also entered the program as a mature student.
From the second we met, we just have not stopped hanging out since. We kind of got each other through the program. We were with each other all the way through Pine.
She waited with me for a veggie burger on our day one lunch because they didn't have enough cooked. And from that point forward, she's just really helped support me through.
From the cafeteria line to the grad gown queue, the duo has stuck together from day one. Soon, they'll kickstart their nursing careers together at an Indigenous-led community health center.
We need more Indigenous people in those places that are making decisions and more Indigenous people in those places that are working directly frontline. There is a community of Indigenous people here at the university that are so unbelievably supportive, and they really want to see that you make it through to the end.
Campbell says those interested in Pine can learn more by visiting the University of Manitoba's website or by emailing pine@umanitoba.ca. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
APTN Investigates is back this week with an all-new episode. Journalist Christopher Reed looks into the recent battle over LeMay Forest and the mystery surrounding unmarked graves at the site. Activists fought for months to protect the land from development before Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew stepped in at the 11th hour. Here's a preview.
St. Norbert, a distinct community on the south end of Winnipeg. The place where Louis Riel's dream of what Manitoba should be took shape. And this is a former orphanage and home for unwed mothers, Asile Richaud. The orphanage began in 1904 and stopped operating in 1948. But its impact is still being felt. Especially in these woods, the final resting place of an uncertain number of children, many of whom were likely Métis.
If you compare the numbers of children that died at the Asile Richaud, it is overwhelming.
Quite a few people were really wanting to see this land get protected and honored the way it should.
And you can catch Cherished Woods, the fight for LeMay, in about 90 seconds from now. We're all out of time for your APTN National News for this weekend. For the very latest, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.